who is the Dean of the School of Architecture at the University of Miami. And we're very excited to see his work today and to have him here at FIU, which we hope it becomes one of the points of a network of students and faculty in South Florida working together to make this city better and more special.
Thank you. Let me keep it brief. Rodolphe is extraordinary for at least two reasons. One is he has an incredible pedigree as someone who studied at RISD, followed by MIT, followed by a PhD at Princeton, and he's taught at an equally prestigious line of schools, including also Princeton, Columbia, MIT, Rice, and the University of Toronto, where he had as his teaching assistant none other than Elliot Studevant, our recently appointed tenure-track history faculty. The second thing I think is remarkable about Rodolphe is he combines an interest in history, having worked on Ledoux and others, a very scholarly interest in history, with an openness towards technology that is relatively unusual in the kind of history theory and criticism world. He's worked on interactive systems as a designer as well as a researcher, and has published on living, breathing, thinking buildings, and so on. And I think this is important that in history itself, if we think about some of the figures and their relationship to technology, I'm absolutely convinced that Filippo Brunelleschi would be fascinated by 3D printing right now, and Rodolphe has got an amazing 3D printer at the University of Miami. And Alberti, likewise, someone I worked on myself, would be fascinated by AI. I'm totally convinced of this, and I often make the joke that his name begins in A and ends in I. I'll say no more. Rodolphe has got some more interesting things to say than I have, but it's great to see Rodolphe here and to have a connection between the University of Miami and FIU. Rodolphe, thank you.
I do think we are about to see some major disruptions. Here's an example. We finally invested in the large format concrete printer at the University of Miami. We frankly don't know what to do with it yet, but the robotic arm is sitting idle most of the time. But we got actually smaller ones, which are much more useful, by the way. I'm sure you are doing the same. And I don't have to tell you about AI. You have the experts here, and I could have used an image from FIU. This is one of my favorite people working in that area, Andrew Cutlass. I'm just showing this. So from the new means and technologies of construction and fabrication to the AI-driven processes for design, these are major candidates here for the disruption of the field. What I'm going to talk about is different. It's not so much about the new tools, the new means that are allowing us to build and design differently and different things, but actually how to think of technology as something that is integrated, embedded in the building itself. So yes, we talk about AI, but AI as basically as an algorithm that is embedded in a responsive system and allowing the building to perform in new ways. And this is what we do at RAD. It's a research unit that I lead. It has an educational role, offers courses every term. It trains students, it guides and assists students in their projects, thesis projects if they are using technology. But also it has projects with dedicated research staff that are promoted through this platform. And like I said, it's about thinking of how that intelligence, that computational capacity, that algorithmic function is actually embedded in the material, in the building itself and its components. So we have a very simple formula that we apply systematically. We think of anything, any building component, down to the brick, like in this case, and just explore what would happen when we add some wireless connectivity, computational capacity to it, connect it to other things and see how it can do new things. And we do this at many scales, from the brick going up, building ecosystems within the building, up to the scale of the smart city. And at the lower end here, at the small scale, and usually we refer to this as the Internet of Things, but that's not quite right, and I will explain why. I prefer the term pervasive or ubiquitous computing. At the other end is smart cities. Also, not quite right, but I like to use those standard terms just to place the work in a familiar context. So these are the examples from the two extremes. The piece on the left, so student work, it's very old, but I use it because it's so clear in actually translating that diagram that I just showed you. Literally here we have let me play it again. A brick that has some kind of capacity to detect, take an input and an output. So in this case, basically it's responding to light, and you can imagine how it could be programmed to mitigate solar heat gain, or to yield, to open the view or to close it, depending on the environmental conditions. But it's very simple. Each brick is responding locally to some kind of input, and then translating it into an action, which is the rotation of the brick with the servo motor. On the right, at the other end of the spectrum, this is showing you just one illustration diagram from a smart city we designed. Actually, it's a greenfield project that we were commissioned in the Yucatan. It was a great, exciting opportunity. This is one feature of it, which is basically we were presenting the idea behind the public transportation system along the commercial spine. It's basically autonomous shuttles that are using the very familiar, actually, elevator algorithm to optimize the movement of people by clustering them to specific destination. But we wanted to place the garages at the periphery of the city so that all the visitors will park. They can't enter the city. They park at the periphery and they take the shuttle. And there was a lot of resistance to this, because you can imagine it would be the same in the US. Mexico has a similar car culture. But we demonstrated here how actually this is not very dissimilar from the experience of actually driving to a high-rise building, parking in the garage, and taking an elevator, similar distances. We cheated by choosing the tallest building in the world, but actually they bought it. Okay, so this gives you an idea of the kind of the technology and how we deploy it at different scales. So now I'm going to present in depth one project that is ongoing, and then quickly after that we will move through very different projects very quickly. So this started with that experiment, remember, of taking any object, familiar object of everyday life, in this case a blanket, and actually thinking of adding technology to it and what would happen. This is it. Basically, it's a blanket which includes conductive fabric and thread to constitute basically electronic circuit with tilt sensors. So one floral, what I'm calling the floral cluster, is equivalent to this here on the right, if it were to be built with conventional electronic components. It's very important here to emphasize how the design of the integration of the technology is important, because we are not just like gluing devices and calling it a day, and also we are not hiding everything under the hood. We are making the technology invisible, but by integrating it into, in this case, like almost like a decorative tradition of floral design in blankets, and reconstituting the blanket itself as the electronic circuit. Now, what does it do? Basically, it has this capacity to build in real time a digital twin of itself and then keep track of its different states and motion. You can see how it works. How is this done? Basically, this tassel will fall on a different petal depending on the tilt, the angle of the tilt at any point in the surface, on the surface of the blanket. And depending on where it falls, it's going to change the voltage because the resistance change. The current is going to go through 1, 2, 3, or 4 of these resistors, creating a variation in the voltage. And that's the data. This variation in voltage is the data set from which we can extrapolate the entire shape of the blanket. So what for? It serves to keep track, record, because of the variation in the shape and movement of the sleep patterns. That serve then for the diagnosis and treatment of sleep disorders. Now, usually for this kind of diagnosis, you have to, I've gone through this. You go to the hospital, you spend the night, they plug all this equipment, they ask you to sleep. Imagine who can sleep with this. And then they get very precise measurements, very accurate, for one night, and then that serves as the basis for the diagnosis. The blanket is not precise at all. It's really rough, but it's doing this every night. Imagine what you get after 1 year, continuous measurement, dirty data, but actually, as you know, with the big data and data analytics, the size of the quantity is more important than the quality, one. Also, it's continuous measurement, and actually with a non-invasive method, so it's actually a more accurate record of what's going on in your sleep pattern. It's in the background, you don't think about it, it's doing its job, it's integrated into the decor of your home, lovely floral pattern, innocuous, benign. That's basically the point here of introducing objects like this into your home to have another functionality and that could perform different things and could contribute to your health and well-being. So that's the principle guiding this ongoing project, keeping us very busy right now, actually in collaboration with partners across the university. It's an interdisciplinary project, and I will come back to this, where we're trying to bring healthcare to the home. Why? Like I said, just with Blanky, sometimes the continuous measurement, especially for chronic conditions, is better that one point in time that is very precise. It's better to do it continuously, even if it's not accurately. So the home, in certain instances, especially for chronic diseases, is better for the exercise of some healthcare practices. Also, you can imagine how there's an advantage for healthcare at home for people with mobility challenges. Also, remember the pandemic and how during that period, really, we tried to stay at home even when we had health issues, because the hospital is not a safe place many times, in many circumstances. Also, there is a great interest in the decentralization of healthcare, a more equal distribution of healthcare, what we call pervasive healthcare, a term that we have adopted but also applied at the scale of the home. Because monsters, the hospitals are becoming these big, overblown monsters, and there is this interest in actually breaking them down into a more evenly distributed network. So we are rethinking the home as an ecosystem of interconnected devices. Think of Blanky connecting with other objects like that, continuously gathering data to constitute a digital twin of the household, and that is actually also fleshed out with information from environmental sensors that place the digital twin in a fuller picture that includes the environmental context, so that with the correlations that are possible, then the system could, for instance, determine that, let's say, 72.5 degrees is the optimal temperature for you, this person in particular, to get a good night's sleep based on several months of collected data, and therefore will send this information to the thermostat to modulate very precisely the exact right temperature for you in your room. Gets also more interesting when you think of how it connects to other systems like the HVAC. So let's say that there is some indication based on data and correlations that someone in the household has an infectious disease. The Blanky can pick the temperature, for instance. Then immediately the airflow in this person's room can reverse to create a negative pressure, so that the air can only leave through the ducts and the integrated HEPA filters because of the negative pressure. So that will mitigate the propagation of the microbes. Anyway, so at the center of this ecosystem is what we're calling the healthcare appliance. You know, just like you have a TV or a microwave, we think that you could have at home an appliance dedicated to healthcare. It's the medicine cabinet in your bathroom. For a number of reasons, it's the ideal place and the ideal device to take on this role. We think of it as like a Swiss Army knife of sensors and various features like optimized lighting and cameras, etc., that enable precise measurements, observation, etc. But also it's an ideal portal for teleconferencing, for telemedicine and private consultations. So here are some of the functions it performs. You know, it can go through a daily check with you every day. You know what? This is when you wake up. This is what you do. You stand in front of the sink. You have this time always as part of your daily routine in front of the mirror, an ideal moment for actually performing a few routine checks. It helps you with the drug regimen and the dispensing of the drugs. It can guide you through certain routines with augmented reality, you know, overlaying instructions and images on your reflection. For instance, here in brushing the teeth, telling you where and for how long. And like I said, it's ideal for teleconferencing. It's a portrait format, a lot of real estate, feels more, you know, because of the scale and also the privacy of the bathroom. It gets closer to the experience that you would get in a clinic. And also it has a lot of real estate, and, you know, as a display that visualizes your data, delivers information, instructions, etc. So here is an example of the drug regimen aspect.
Today your health checks include EKG and CO2. Start My Health to begin.
Oh.
Please select the test to start.
Oh, sorry, this is just the daily check in the morning.
Place your thumbs below the arrow on the sensor.
We're gonna move faster because I want to get to one of the most exciting features, which is how it gives you instructions about what to take if you have a drug regimen and at what time. Remember, because the medicine cabinet is where you store your drugs, medication.
Tony, here's your medication schedule for today. Right now you have a metformin pill. Please be sure you have not eaten before taking it. Here is the remaining schedule for your medicine today. You have to take captopril in 1 hour. We've noticed your metformin supply is running low. Metformin is on your automatic refill list and will be ordered to CVS. The order has been placed. It's expected to arrive on Monday.
Okay, you get the picture. It does many interesting things like this. But now what we're doing is fleshing out the ecosystem of related devices. They work together. By the way, so we created, with the help of we created a startup which is actually bringing these products to the market and now currently developing the prototypes. Anyway, so one of the first acolytes, so to speak, is this pendant lamp that sits on top of your kitchen table or in the dining room that basically keeps track of what you're eating, displays in real time some relevant information, and nudges you gently to comply with the prescribed diets. It has, you know, the computer vision, mic, etc., all AI driven. Here's how it works. Donnie is our model for all the movies at the lab. So it scans. I mean, this is actually now, there are many products that do this. You can do it with your phone. AI has been refined to actually very precisely recognize what you're eating and actually determine the amount to a level of precision. What's different here is that this is not like you're not pulling out your phone, deliberately measuring. This is happening just with like the blanket happening in the background. All of this is being recorded. You may choose to like look at the information and you can ignore it. Also, because it's happening without you taking any action, also it can keep track of what you didn't eat and can subtract it then from the equation. I know this is when it becomes a bit scary. And we can talk later, and I would like to, about all these issues of, you know, surveillance and privacy and data, the datafication of everything. Do we want to live in a world like that? It's an interesting conversation. I'm sure you are all having it in your studio. what I want to show you a detail here is that we worked really, like, we were very concerned about how the information is displayed. Like, it tells you how many calories, like the breakdown, that many proteins, etc. It's not like it's displayed on the screen. It's more subtle. It's, you know, a bit vague, nebulous. It's more like ambient intelligence, something that is there in the background. That's ambiance more than information, so as not to, you know, be too heavy-handed about that, how we deliver this kind of information. A bit, again, going back to the example of the blanket where the benign floral arrangement is actually working very hard to track all your movements while you're sleeping. Similar sensibility with the display, and this is how you mobilize design for a different kind of approach to technology and how it can be integrated in everyday life.
Good evening, Tony. Let's go over the meals you had today.
So, of course, everything is collected and then delivered back to you with some...
That's a total of 668 calories for lunch,
providing perhaps some insights on the pattern and how it relates to your well-being.
Here's your summary glucose levels for today. It seems that your glucose has spiked. Try having dinner earlier tomorrow.
Right.
Have a good night, Tony.
Okay, you see, this is what was presented at eMERGE. We're here showcasing it to the former provost who gave the green light for the creation of the startup. Anyway, I mentioned this requires a lot of collaboration across different disciplines. It's a very big team. The School of Architecture and the RAD Lab is driving it, but especially from the design perspective. But we have, you know, people from the researchers from the Institute of Data Science who are figuring out the whole privacy and cybersecurity aspect, extremely important when you're dealing with healthcare. We have the chemistry department working on the environmental sensors, and of course in biochemistry and molecular biology, developing the other kinds of sensors and measuring devices for the biometrics. So briefly, we're basically decoupling healthcare from the dedicated institutions and facilities, and setting up the home as a great place for it. The home is reinvented as an ecosystem that can attend to of devices and responsive systems that can attend to acute conditions, but also can sustain and promote well-being. Approaching basically pathology and health and well-being as a continuum, basically. So now, if there's one specialized place in this reinvented home, it's the bathroom, which is transformed by means of the medicine cabinet with all its new functions into basically an examination room that is optimized for measuring, for communicating, for displaying the information, for private consultations with the health providers. So, any questions? Because we're going to switch gears completely now. Yes.
So, all the data that's collected from these various devices, where would that then be stored? Would you access via an account that you could, like some kind of portal that you will access online?
So it will be all in the cloud, of course, but the wireless network has to be extra secure, and the router will be part of that. The kind of specialized router will be part of the medicine cabinet, which functions as that hub, the appliance, yes.
And so that data, that would only be accessible to the user, because now
Right.
data collection from so many things from us, it's usually anonymized and then sold off.
Right.
So is that something that wouldn't happen, or would that be something?
So that's a big philosophical question. So let's keep those for the end, because I would like to address this. All of these projects have that issue, that, especially the ones I'm going to show you later. It's a great, great question. So, but by the way, you can interrupt with questions at any time if it's for clarification. But keep the big, challenging questions for the end. So now we're switching to the smart city scale. You will see that smart city is not really adequate to describe these projects, but I still like it because then it places the project in the context of a smart city discourse, and sometimes actually in conflict with it. Because the whole smart city discourse is completely focused on efficiencies, optimizations, everything is under the hood, invisible processes that serve just to make things work better, but have no consequences, I think, in terms of how we experience the city. So all of the projects I'm going to show you now, although fitting within that smart city paradigm, are trying to push in another direction, where the point is not just to make things work better, but actually we want the technology to enable us to have new experiences in the city, things that are unprecedented and that would not be possible without the technology. So I divided these projects into different categories. Let's go through them very quickly. I think for me the most interesting is this idea of being able to customize public space for individual needs and purposes and desires. That's like almost like a contradiction, right? It is a contradiction because by definition, public space is supposed to be the common denominator, the platform that can accommodate everybody. But actually, when you think about it, there are very familiar instances where we can be in our customized private sphere in public space. The most famous, of course, is the Walkman, which introduced that possibility, that bubble that you can exist in, the oral acoustical bubble that can create a very different experience for you while you are sharing a public space with other people. The problem is that the isolation that it creates pulls you out of that context. Have you heard there's this new thing, a new trend, new headphones that are coming from Japan? They look just like an armature, and the speakers are suspended in the air facing the ear, the transducers. So it's like deliberately resisting the whole trend of creating that bubble. All the new technology is striving to silence, to block out the exterior, the noise canceling technology, basically. So this is going completely in the other direction in order to bring that whole world back to you as you listen to music. So it's very uncanny when you put them on. It sounds like somebody's talking to you, or there's like a loudspeaker next to you, blending with everything else. A very different experience. Anyway, there's a backlash to the whole noise canceling impulse, which goes back to what I'm saying earlier, that actually there's almost a paradox in seeking a private space within the public realm. Actually, sometimes it's perceived as almost perverse. Like in this, have you seen this movie, the Truman Show, where technology basically has is portrayed very negatively as the instrument of alienation. There's a climax here where the protagonist basically is trapped, imprisoned in his own weather. Like the technology creates a very individuated, tailored weather for this individual. And that's the extreme moment of alienation. So we don't like that, this kind of customization in public space. But what if actually, and this is an installation that actually has moved around, I don't remember the name of the artist, where you enter a big space and it's raining everywhere, except where you're walking. So it's just like the Truman Show, but there's a reversal. Wherever you stand, there is no rain. So suddenly it's not alienating anymore. It's actually nice. And you feel connected to all the other people walking around who don't have the rain. There's a kind of a sense of community that is forged by that reversal. So it's the exact opposite. So this is what we were trying to do with this project. This is one, actually, of many projects where we tackle this paradox of the customization in public space. So this was a response to a competition issued by the Design District a few years ago. Remember when they were suffering from the fact that they had no trees because they didn't want to occlude the shops, the windows. No trees, a lot of sun. It was really unbearable. They had a competition for a shading strategy. This is our response. It's a bit tongue-in-cheek. Basically, we proposed a fleet of these inflatable parasols that are carried by drones. Like they are buzzing around. When you arrive, they latch onto you and follow you around to provide shade. That you can wave them away if you don't want them. And then they go and dock and recharge and wait for the next person. So it's a bit over the top. It's more like a provocation. But speaking about infrastructure as something that is not one solution fits all, we're not just providing a big canopy, but allowing the people to actually choose. They can elect to be shaded or not. And so there's a service that delivered to individuals and not deployed as a blanket solution. Here it is. Another thing that's interesting, the segue to the next theme, is gently, okay, so it follows you around, but it is programmed, actually it positions itself very precisely between you and the sun, taking into consideration the angle, and then, but very gently, imperceptibly, it is moving you in the direction of other people around, because actually it becomes more efficient when it clusters into a ceiling, a fragment of a ceiling, a cluster. So by bringing people together, walking together, basically it is meant to prompt interaction, social interaction, nudging them into interacting. So that's the next theme, how this technology, the smart city, you see how we are not really in the smart city discourse anymore. This is not about efficiency, and this is actually very inefficient, but it's actually doing something else. Again, you know about the problem of the social media, our mobile devices, how they pull us out away from our environments and isolate us in our own bubbles. So we've been thinking about how to use the technology actually to leverage social media not as actually something that will separate and alienate, but actually bring people together. This was for Emerge, it's an espresso bar. Actually, we served coffee, but the countertop has projections from below that actually, when you choose your espresso, you choose a hashtag. So there's the tag at the bottom of the cup. And then, depending on the theme you choose, the tweets, Instagram posts, etc., related to that theme will flock to your cup, and then you can, by rotating the cup, you can cycle through them. The idea is that actually the exposure, the display of those, this information around your cup then will perhaps prompt people to engage in conversations across the bar. So that was the origin for this project, a kind of a refinement of that idea to make that interaction more deliberate and spatial. It was a response to a competition for the installation at Burning Man, where we stacked these old TVs and created a spaces like a grotto, we call it the Oasis, where you can see your Instagram feeds. As Burning Man, you know, the idea is that you can get completely disconnected from your phone, the social media, all of that is left behind. So this is offered as like a one moment, an oasis where actually you can bring all this back. So it has an cellular phone, receptor, antenna, all of this to optimize that reception there in the middle of nowhere. So you would have to download an app and subscribe to the service. So when you get there, this is how it looks with the antenna. It has that kind of post-apocalyptic sensibility, which is very much part of the whole Burning Man experience. So here, let me show this. So when you arrive, all the stuff related to you shows up around you and then leaves a trail that gradually fades away. And then when you encounter someone else, your feeds start to merge and therefore may provoke some kind of interaction. Maybe that's it. Another one here as it was part of an RFQ or PRFP we presented for the Underline to design their lighting. We had done some straightforward kind of smart city lighting projects. So, but we also presented some quirky projects to add to the more straightforward response to the RFP. And of course, after we present the quirky projects, we never hear from them again. So this is meant to cluster people, again, in order to induce some kind of interaction by actually having a pulse, like a wave of light. So it's lit everywhere, but there's an intensification that moves in a wave, and people want to follow that wave, but actually, because if they do, they will hit the green light when they arrive at the major intersection. So that wave is timed so actually to land you right at the moment where the green light is on. You can see here how it works. So the wave arrives when you can cross. So you want to, especially if on a bicycle, you want to keep up with the wave. Meaning people will cluster and then we'll have conversations rather than actually running or walking separately. Again, smart city, responsive lights, etc., but always with that surplus, this kind of weird thing that is actually doing more than making your city safer and more efficient. It actually has that je ne sais quoi that is, we think is a very important part of what the lab has to offer. Another theme is, this is a big one, here I'm calling it displaying the imperceptible, and we could actually describe it also as a kind of visualization project. You know, so much of the city is now sucked away, and it's all now in social media or on the web. Many projects at RAD try to bring down, like land, all this activity, this information, this wealth of virtual content back on in the city to reanimate it, also to visualize data, but also to make some phenomena that are not necessarily substantial or perceptible, make them more evident. Here is actually a project that was commissioned by the Frost Museum of Science. It went pretty far, but then when they had the big budget problems, it just stopped. Basically, it was an attempt to animate one of the big elevations that is blank and still blank with a gigantic display. It's actually part of a series of projects that try to integrate living matter into building by means of technology. Here, every time I show this project, I have to show this image to boast about how this was done with my professional practice, which is still based in Toronto. In 2007, we integrated algae bioreactors into a building. This was a competition project for the Museum of Contemporary Art in Shenzhen. We were one of the 4 finalists. But as far as I know, this was the first building that had this algae as part of the facade. Anyway, I had to boast here. So this facade then is constituted of an algae farm comprising 1,200 individual tanks that are arrayed in a grid, connected to the water and HVAC system. You know, they scrub the air, remediate gray water, sequester carbon, produce a biofuel that offsets the energy bill. But beside all of these great environmental benefits, it also creates a display because each tank is a pixel. And basically the greenness, the color of the pixel is modulated by the computer. Basically, more air going through, more food for the algae, denser culture, deeper green. These are the experiments with the technology, how you can create the variation in the green. You can use it to display any image. Actually, the former provost, Tom LeBlanc, called it the largest and slowest developing Polaroid in the world, because it will probably take 1 week to create one image. But basically, we propose it as a big billboard that displays data about the invisible processes that, you know, shape the city. In this case, we are showing how you could display a kind of a competitive spirit. You could show the rate of water consumption in all the neighborhoods to bring awareness actually to these environmental aspects that we are not necessarily very conscious of, and create a conversation around them. So this is a big monumental display. It turns this kind of data and its visualization into a spectacle, and it's a new way to think about civic spaces and how they can make perceptible these invisible forces in the city. This is another project which deals with that same making the imperceptible more palpable in the city. It's about the bridges in Miami, you know, because the topography, we have a very flat city. There are all these bridges, but unless you are right there, crossing the bridge, you are, or looking, you know, at a map, you are not aware of them. So this was a project, actually we were part of a group that presented an RFP for lighting project for the entire county. See Through, a very famous French firm specializing in lighting, they partnered with us as, you know, the local engagement piece. And then they asked us to do a few of these quirky projects to present with the package. We never got the project. But so we proposed that, we mark those bridges and make them more, intelligible. They become more part of the urban imagination if they were more visible thanks to these searchlights that beam up. Whenever a boat passes, then there is this kind of a beam that illuminates the sky and actually marks the bridge. Then this evolved into not only the boats, but to mark the entire bridge and vary the light with a gradient, so intensifying towards the center, so that actually we could basically almost amplify the arc of the bridge with that gradient of light. So the light becomes really, it translates basically the geometry of bridge and by exaggerating it and translating it into a different medium. You can see it here. Then we added one more thing, is created a pulse that actually registers the movement of the cars. So you are not along the bay, you are still in the far from it, and you are trying to make a decision about which bridge you're going to take across. You can see by looking at those lights and that pulse, that wave, you can get a sense of which bridge is moving and which one isn't. Like, where is the traffic flowing? Just with this kind of subtle variation in the light. How am I with time? Like,
7 minutes.
Okay, quickly. This is another project in that same genre where it's also for the underline. It's an array of photovoltaic panels that will actually power the light. And actually it is meant for the station to market with a kind of a monumental project here that celebrates, the energy efficient systems. So it's but the quirk here, besides actually creating a very nice envelope for the station, is that the panels they rotate and they follow the sun to optimize their efficiency. So you can see how they are rotating, but they don't all rotate at the same rate. What's happening is that if you want to participate in this, through the app, which actually serves the entire lighting system for the underline, you are assigned a panel. It becomes yours. It's tagged. It's for you. And what it does, it tracks your movement. So when you're active, it moves and tries to keep up with the sun. If you're sitting all day, it doesn't. It's not efficient. It falls behind. So what's interesting here is that you see, those circles on your phone or watch that track your progress towards your goal, daily activity goal. In this case, it's literally showing you the rotation of the panel as it's trying to keep up with the sun. So here, also you can know where your friends are. You can point to their panel. You see how they're doing. If they want to release their data, you see how much the whole array is producing and how much you're contributing to it. So the kind of the gamification of health and activity, but also of these processes, in terms of the energy collection, etc., is translated as something that is very tangible. It's an object that actually you can point to, that is tagged with your name. You can have this kind of personal relation to it. We are back to that first theme of the customization. This is not just the municipal equipment, it's a piece that is part of the infrastructure that you can relate and you can appropriate, so to speak. A very different relation to infrastructure. Anyway, it does different things at night, registering the motion at night of the people, and can show you basically how the city goes. Anyway, the last one, very quickly, is about controlling the ephemeral. We were just talking about how I was very interested in how we have new technologies that allow us to design olfactory experiences, which was never possible before. You know, smell always referred to as this ineffable thing, evanescent, something that you cannot really design, but now we can with microcontrollers. So many projects worked with smell. One of the first one was this synthesizer that was a piece of like a machine that allowed you to perform olfactory experiences by programming and timing the release of different scents at different times, just like you would with on your computer when you are working with if any of you worked with GarageBand or any of these software that allow you to sequence music, it's the same principle. So that was the origin for Scent Garden. This is the oldest project I'm showing. Commissioned for one of those world expos in Xi'an, China, where we designed these scent diffusers, which are also light poles, and they are computer controlled to create, to overlay this olfactory landscape onto the physical garden. Here it is. This is the pole. It has a wind mill at the top, so when there's a gust of wind, the light intensifies, so it shows you how the scent is when you look at the poles, you can see how the scent is moving through the garden. But each pole is actually diffusing a different scent, and what we did is actually mapped the Chinese biomes, basically, with this coordination and orchestration of different scents that are associated with different regions. Designed also to complement the natural fragrance of the garden. So in winter, when that olfactory part of the natural garden quiets down, the electronically orchestrated scents actually then compensate with their growing intensity. Here it is. Oh, and there's a pavilion there. We can actually buy the individual scents as a souvenir after your visit. You can see how the projects which I put in the smart city category are really pushing a bit against the grain of the smart city discourse, which has to do with, data analytics, picking data mining in a very silent, under the hood process. There's no actual visual or experiential evidence of anything that those smart city technologies and practices are doing. So this was kind of sometimes tongue-in-cheek, actually provoking a different kind of discussion about smart cities. Thank you. Okay. Sorry? Yeah, definitely.
Is this working? Yes, we've probably got time for a few questions. Maybe I can just kick it off. Is there a roving mic at all we can use? Okay, otherwise mine. Okay. So one question. I mean, you roved all the way from the architecture of the body through to the city scale. I noticed that MIT, for example, has now got this Morningside Academy of Design, where architecture is part of a bigger discourse of design. as a dean of a school of architecture, do you think we need to rethink what we do in terms of, should it just be restricted to buildings, or should we be embracing a much more bigger spectrum of design?
But I think architecture has always been involved with the city, urban design, planning, so it has, in its better moments, it has always had that larger vision and capacity to shape the built environment. What happened is that that range which I showed from the object to the city tended to get, although architecture has the capacity to embrace all, there's a lot of specialization now and fields that are related to different scales. But definitely, of course, I think that should be the vision and scope of an architect.
I mean, I think with AI in particular, we all could become fashion designers or car designers. And I think this is something that Paolo Antonelli says, that really architecture is just part of a broader spectrum of design. Right. And we shouldn't see it as siloed, as being different from the world outside. Do we have any questions? Okay.
So I was noticing with a lot of this, it's, you know, we talk a lot about like the integration of the city as a whole being almost as if it's a living, breathing organism. And so in doing these kinds of things, especially when a lot of them are layered together, like you think of the bridge and then the clouds and all that coming together, the city starts to really look like it's alive. And it's not just that it's this entity, but that we are ourselves what make it alive. So what do you think are the social implications at the city level or at the local level for these technologies being integrated on a larger scale?
The social yes. Like one of those categories was all about how there's a kind of almost like a hidden social agenda, the gentle prompting, like when the parasols are moving you, shading you, they are prompting you to get closer to other people. If you look at every project, there is that element. Because I think we hear so much about how the digital media have evacuated, you know, the life of the city. You know, that picture I showed where the people are sitting in the museum, but they're... So I think there is a potential in using the technologies in the other direction, is by actually animating and prompting things to happen. You just have to be deliberate about it and set it as a goal, and the technology will do it, right? So, yes.
Any other questions? Well, maybe then we should wrap up, or I would say not wrap up so much as see this as a opening up of a discourse between University of Miami and FIU. We already have one of your graduates, Lorena Knesevich, on the Doctor of Design program, and let's hope we can then build further bridges between these institutions. I think it's important to more and more to collaborate. So thank you so much, Rodolphe. Oh, it's one more question? Sorry, okay.
Return to the question, thank you for a fascinating talk, to the question at the beginning regarding the kind of privacy issues, all of that. Right. I got a sense you had probably interesting thoughts about those questions, so I was curious to hear those.
Yes, this is the burning, the million-dollar question. I think, one, there's a regulatory framework that's developing around these things, you know, just like you can't assault somebody on the street, and we have a legal system for that. I think that framework will develop to a certain extent that actually it will protect privacy and personal data much more efficiently. There's that element. The other element is that we have to remember that privacy is, you know, it's a social construct that is constantly evolving. Like the way we think of privacy now is very different from years ago. For instance, in the 50s, you were not allowed to bring cameras, like Kodak cameras, to the beach. They were prohibited. Other examples. You know, in certain cities, even in the West, like in Venice, during the carnival period, but actually that was 6 months, the carnival period, people wore masks, so like to expose your face on the street was considered a violation of your privacy, so you protected it by wearing a mask. So again, this is evidence of the changing ideas of privacy. There's another interesting example that I came across when I was doing my research on Paris in the 18th century, when they introduced 18th and 19th century especially, because it happened like at a larger scale. They introduced artificial lighting in the city, you know, for obvious reasons, security, safety, etc. But there were protests that the light was violating the citizens' privacy. When you stop and reflect on this, it's like a cognitive dissonance. Who would now think of a lit street as a violation of privacy? So which means that actually our definition of privacy has evolved dramatically. And I think it will continue to evolve. Another way to answer your question, privacy as we know it will cease to exist. Like it doesn't exist anymore, and we will adapt to it.
One of your slides in the restroom had the words, I think, privacy and communication side by side, and that really struck me, right? The idea of communicating while maintaining privacy.
Right. Yes. That's right. The idea of now when you have telemedicine, you do it on your laptop, you're sitting at home, like there is no space for it. But this is why we think that the bathroom should be repurposed for that reason. Yeah.
Okay, let's wrap up. Can you please join me in thanking Rodolphe for a really wonderful lecture? Thank you.